Welcome back. Our next presenter, his name is Rohit Sehgal. And Rohit today is going to talk about a very cool tool that he created, an open source tool called DockerENT or DockerENT. It's basically a tool that you can run to perform security assessments in Docker environments. Thank you so much, Rohit, for supporting the Red Team Village and supporting GrayHat. The floor is yours.
Hi everyone. So today I'll be talking to you about the tool that I've recently created in open source domain. It is DockerENT, and this is a tool and a framework to analyze security issues inside the running containers. And proudly, it's the only open source tool which has a flexibility of a pluggable infrastructure, and it can go inside the Docker container and identify the security misconfigurations. So I'll be presenting that tool to you about today. And in today's presentation, I'll cover very short stuff about who am I. Then I'll start talking about the DockerENT as a tool, a quick overview of what tool does and why do we need this particular tool and how this tool can help an organization securing the runtime configurations of a Docker. Then I'll talk about the checks which are already present in this DockerENT as a tool. Once that is done, I'll talk about the technical details of how you can create your own plugins. Once that is done, I'll show you a quick demonstration of how easy is to use this particular tool through web interface and command line interface as well. Once that is done, I'll talk about the future work and the scope, what we can do, how we can leverage that particular tool, how we can contribute this tool back. So yeah. So before starting, I would like to emphasize a difference between the tool and a framework. So I have written this as a framework instead of a tool. The idea was behind we have compliance check or runtime configuration container checks according to the needs of the organization. So I thought of coming up with a framework so that which is customized according to the need of an organization, and so everyone can customize it and use it. But in the tools perspective as well, I have given few set of plugins for scanning Dockers right now, and I'm working on scanning Docker networks. So yeah, those plugins are already there. This is from the tools perspective, but it's more of a framework than a tool that I'm proposing here today. I hope you will like this tool. So let's start. Okay. So who am I? So I'm a security engineer with all around 4 years of pure security experience. I have done masters from system security from IIT Kanpur, and I started with bug hunting, but now I'm on the other side of the table. I actually try to secure applications for organizations. So I am currently working with Visa right now, but yeah, I'm on the other side of the table. But I started my career of security with bug bounties and bug huntings. I'm a OSCP certified professional. I am into pen testing. I do source code review, design reviews, and I do a lot of development. So when I said about development, I do closed source development as well for my organization, and I do open source development. I love writing tools for community. So few of my very popular open source repositories are here. So I have written a trash email, DOT proxy, cloud marker, BinXP, Kubernetes in 30 minutes, and this DockerENT is one of those. So if you are curious to know about my tools, you can just check out my GitHub repo. The link is shared in the presentation. This is my GitHub username. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, happy to connect. So this is my Twitter handle. And if you want to know more about me, you can log into my website and check. So this is all about Rohit Sehgal as a person. Now let's talk about what is DockerENT. So I'll try to cover as much as I can in this particular presentation. So the idea of the DockerENT started when I had to scan a particular Docker runtime configuration. It was during the pen testing process, so I had to identify the security misconfigurations. Now the thing was, there were more than one instances of Docker running in the system, and I had to repeat all those set of instances for all the running instances, set of scripts for all the running instances. So I thought of why not automate this particular part? Why not automate the report generation part so that in a go, anyone just simply few clicks away, you can get the report handy, and you can directly identify which containers are running with non-compliance option, which containers are running the compliant option. So I thought of designing a framework, and I call it as DockerENT. DockerENT. So it's a Docker runtime security scanning tool, to be in short. It's a framework more than a tool. So it's a framework written in Python, and it has been designed to keep in mind so that you can write your own custom plugins very easily and quickly. And it has also been designed keeping in mind so that anyone who don't have knowledge about the Dockers, who don't have knowledge about security, can quickly adapt to this particular tool. Deployment part has been kept very simple. So that's the beauty about this tool. So what it can do for you. So this can scan running containers in the system with a security misconfiguration. It can perform Docker level checks, and when I say Docker level checks, it can check if the namespace are okay or not, if the namespace has been properly mounted or not, why the namespace has been mounted, so it can create an info alert out of it, and it can also provide you control groups related misconfiguration. It can audit result for you, and best part out of it is that it is really customizable. So I'll talk about why I call it as a really customizable tool in the upcoming slide. But yeah, this is what DockerENT can do all stuff for you. And yeah, it's a DevSecOps friendly tool as well. So I mean, let's say if there is a DevSecOps person who want to just analyze the containers, the set of containers which are running the production, so they can quickly set this up. There is no need to set up this tool actually, so they can quickly spin this up, and after spinning they can just get everything out handy. And at times in production systems, I've noticed that there is no access to web interface and all those things, so I've designed DockerENT keeping those things in mind. I'll talk about these things in the upcoming slide, but yeah, these are the few facts about DockerENT. And sorry for that. Yeah, and one more thing is that at the end of the day, if you see every cluster which is made out of containers, like Kubernetes cluster or Docker Swarm cluster, at the end of the day, they are running Dockers, and at the fine grain level, they are performing the Docker level checks for those cluster as well. Can give you an insight about how secure your cluster is. So if you see, it can perform the cluster level checks as well, but it will not directly go inside the cluster and perform. It will rather scan all the Docker instances which are running in your system and give you report for that. So at the end of the day, it can help you secure Kubernetes cluster. It can help you secure the Swarm clusters as well. Yeah, it's a framework, and it's a framework similar but powerful to Docker Bench, because if you see, Docker Bench is more of a script rather than a framework. So it is some way similar, but it is powerful than Docker Bench as well, and I'll talk about that thing in the upcoming slide. So yeah, in the next slide itself. So let's try to differentiate DockerENT in Docker Bench. Okay, so if you see DockerENT, as I talked about already, it will help you perform runtime configuration checks. It can perform the checks by going inside the running containers and doing stuff out of it. Like, let's say if there is a application properties file which is having plain text credentials, so it's a compliance issue. So this can go inside the running Docker, scan all the configuration files, scan all the properties files, and then give you the list of passwords which are already present in there. On the other hand, if you see, Docker Bench will only perform the CS benchmarks checks. Now, when I talk about CS benchmark checks, they are and they are not related to the runtime configurations. So there are few checks which talks about the runtime configuration, and there are few checks which just talks about the host configuration of that particular Docker daemon. But DockerENT is, I would say, is like an overlapping superset of Docker Bench. It's not the superset in completely. It's not like independent tool out of Docker Bench, but there is some overlap that is happening. And it can also perform checks by executing commands at Docker, which Docker Bench is not capable enough of. So if you see, if I just draw about the Venn diagram of both the tools, it will look something like this. I'm not comparing if a tool is performing more scans for a particular container, but yeah, this is how it would look, and there is some overlap happening. And the independent part of these tools is that it can perform container internal checks. It can go inside the container and perform the checks, whereas Bench can check host level hardening checks. So these are the few things that make these tools different. But yeah, there is some overlap which is there, and the overlap is the runtime CI's benchmark checks only. So that is how this thing works. Yeah, so this is how the DockerENT is actually different from Docker Bench. Okay, so let's talk about how easy this DockerENT is to start it quickly. So that's the beauty of it. So you can install a DockerENT with pip, because I have packaged it through pip as well, and I plan to do upcoming releases. But yes, there are there might be few set of plugins which are not in the package or the release right now, so you can run from the source directly if you're curious to know about the latest packages which are being latest plugins which are being developed actively, or you can call it as a nightly builds. So for nightly builds you can run from source, or if you want to run a stable build, you can install it through pip. Installing through pip is very easy. We have all done in our cases. So you just have to run pip install DockerENT. Once that is done, it will download the dependencies as well. After doing this, just run dockerent -w. So dockerent -w will spin up a web interface or web application for you. And the web application has been created through Streamlit interface, because I'm not at all into UI development and web application development. So I have taken the offerings from Streamlit, because they allows you to create web applications by writing Python classes and Python code. So thanks to them. If you can just run this, it will with -w option, you can quickly get the web interface for you. And yeah, if you have stuck anywhere, just do dockerent -help, and it will give you the set of options that it has and all. The other option is building from source and running from source. So I've tried to make things simple for everyone. So just clone the repo. I have provided the make file in it, so you can just do the make deps and make virtual environment. I activate the virtual environment, and then you can run it through run it as if it's an installed module. So you can just run it through Python -n dockerent -help. So yeah, if you just provide -w option in here, it will spin up a web application for you. If you don't provide that option, then you will have to provide -d option, which will perform the Docker scan on the command line itself. And if you provide -d -d-nw, which will perform a Docker network scan. So right now there are no plugins for Docker network, but yeah, this is how it looks, and this is how simple is it to use dockerent in the current scenario. And this is the main reason I say that this tool is actually flexible enough so that it can be used by a Python developer, a hardcore Python developer, or security engineer, or a DevSecOps person, because the simplicity of tool is like it can be installed quickly, it can be run very quickly, and it can generate the report in a go as well. Okay, so let's now talk about what sort of checks it helps you perform. What checks are already there in the tooling part of it, because as I mentioned, it's more of a framework than a tool. But when I talk about the tool, also there are few checks which come in this framework itself. So these are few of the checks. But yes, if you want to know about the latest checks which are there in it, so you can directly go to this particular link. It will give you the list. So yeah, this is the set of these are the set of plugins or the checks which are already in there. So there is a command history, file system, network, and so on. These are the links to those particular files. And if you see, the last two columns is the feature and audit. So if you see few of the plugins have audit field missing, or it is written that there is no audit available for that particular plugin. So those plugins do not provide you any audit results, rather they'll just give you info results. So yeah, let's talk about each of them quickly. So command history can give you the shell history if it is present. And the context of this issue came into my mind when I saw a developer log in inside a Docker and then performing some set of commands, and they were actually connecting to the MySQL database. This is the background of writing this particular plugin. They were actually connecting to a MySQL database, and they were using password on the command line interface itself, which got recorded in the Docker history, Docker shell history. And yeah, that is again a compliance issue, and it can lead to a lot of severe consequences. So this plugin can help you in that way. There is a file system plugin that can help you identify if there is a read-write file system, and this is crucial because let's say if your application get exploited, even after your application exploitation, what's the first step for anyone's attacker is to create a file, right? And for that they need to identify if there is a read-write file system or not. Why not prevent that particular issue before? So yeah, file system info can help you that. Network can help you identify the list of open ports or map ports, what are the protocol used to expose those ports and all. And plain text password can help you identify the list of plain text passwords in configuration file, in certificate files, in properties files, in YAML files, and all sort of configuration files you can think of. Security profile can help you identify the weak security rules that are there, like SE Linux policies, AppArmor. User info can help you identify the list of uh, list of the users which are there and which users have privileged access, and if they have privileged access, am I the same user, or is the process running with the same user or not, system info and file info. So you can see it's actually a comprehensive set of plugins which are already in there. And for the latest plugins which are there, you can actually go to this particular link and identify it. Yeah. Okay. So now let's go into the technical details of how you can create your own plugin and how the interface has been given to anyone so that they can write their own plugins according to the needs, according to their custom needs. So don't get scared with this particular code snippet. This very simple code that I've tried to return. And the code, if you see in the first line itself, you have to name the plugin like this. So this is the signature that you have to follow. And every plugin module should have a scan function in there. And I'll talk about it. Just give me 1 second. So yeah, the plugin actually starts with a plugin name. You can name this plugin any way you want. So I have given this name as a demo plugin. And followed by, it will take few parameters as input. So one is the container itself, and the container is actually the container instance. It's from Docker Python SDK, and there is an output queue, which is the multiprocessing queue, and there is an audit boolean variable which says you want to enable audit or not, and there is an audit queue which will store the audit results. So this is how your plugin would look like. And then this is the signature of the results that I have given. So every result should have something like this: container.short.id followed by the plugin name and the result. And the result will depend on you. So if you see, the result is like, I am performing a test class operation, and the test class operation has test name, and the test name says that everything is good. So this is how results look like. And then you have to do something magical here. That is completely up to you how you want to scan that particular container. So you can use a Python SDKs, you can use Docker APIs directly to go inside the container, perform some checks, get the results, and then put those results under the test name. And once that is done, you will just put the result in the output queue. If audit is enabled, audit that particular function. And for auditing, this is how the audit part would look like. Yeah. So again, audit has to be done according to the audit of a particular plugin has to be dependent on the plugin itself, how the results are coming up, and how you want to compare the results with the weak configurations and all those things. So you can take the you can take the reference from the existing plugins, how I have written the plugins, how I have written the audit for specific plugin, and the way I have written is that I have given the weaker configuration, I have given the actual configuration, then I'm performing the string comparison check. You can take the reference of how I'm doing that up. So yeah, that is the case. And once this is a signature. If you see on the left hand side, you can see the signature of the audit function. This will only work when the audit is enabled, and I'll talk about what do you mean by audit is enabled or not in the demonstration part. Yes, and this is how the signature of audit result looks like. So the result says that there is a container ID, and you have to pass the container ID here. Container ID for this plugin name as plugin name says that there is a warning info error and details about that particular audit. So again, I'll talk about this thing later while the demonstration, but this is how it looks. And what I've done is I have recorded already an AskAnima session for you all to quickly set this up in the command line interface and then get it running for the command line interface quickly. So there is an AskAnima session that help you how you can build the entire Docker ENT from scratch and then use it as a command line interface itself and get the results out of it. So you can log into there and check. Now let's go to the demo part. Yes. So if you can see my screen, I have already Docker Ent running in my system, and since I'm using the Streamlit, so Streamlit spins up a Docker Ent in the localhost port of 8501. It can also expose your service across the network, so that is not useful in my case. But I'll go to this localhost and try to see how does it look like. So I'll just rerun it. So this is how Docker Ent is looking like. It's a very simple UI. Don't judge me through UI because I'm not at all into web application development. This is what has been offered through Simulate. I've used their libraries. So if you click this particular banner, you will get to know about the tool a bit. And also you'll get to know how to use this particular tool in this particular section. At the end of the day, you can also get the link to the GitHub for Docker Ent. Yeah. So let's hide this again. If you see on the left hand side, the UI is again very simple. It's asking you to select the option to start Docker Ent. As soon as you select a doc start function, it will give you another set of pop-ups. So this is how the pop-ups would look like. Let's say you just want to only scan Docker. So it'll ask you pick a single Docker or all Dockers to start. And once you start the once you pick the Docker, it will ask you which set of plugins you want to execute. And at the end of the day, it will ask you if you want to audit results or not. This is the same audit function which is being triggered. When you only enable it, then only the audit function will be triggered for a specific plugin, if there is any. And again, since I have mentioned the framework for Docker network scanning is already there, but there are no such plugins available. So if you see, these are the network present in my system, but there are no plugins for Docker network scanning. So there is only sample plugin which is in there. So there is no point in scanning Docker networks. So I'll just disable this particular option. Now, if you see in the UI, you can actually select all the Dockers, or you can actually specifically select few Dockers. But for this demonstration, I'll select all the Dockers. So I've selected all the Dockers. And these are the set of plugins which are already there, as I mentioned. If you see from a tooling perspective, these are already the set of plugins. You can again select the set of plugins that you want to execute, or you can simply select all the plugins, mark that you want to audit the results, and then start. Since there are a few set of plugins and it has to perform all operations in all the Docker, so it will take some time, and the progress will be shown in the progress bar. So this is how it would look like. It is saying that it is scanning Docker, and this is an offering from Streamlit saying that the script is being running. So we'll have to wait for it to finish the scan, and yeah, it will take its own time to finish the scan. It will go inside Docker, perform all the checks which are being mentioned here. So if you see, so let's count. It will take its own time. It's performing, and hopefully it's not crashing. That's the great part, because that's the tool written by me. There are chances that it is not crashing, but it's not crashing, thankfully. So let's count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, 0, -1, -2. Yep. Finally, the scanning is done. Thankfully, there was no bug or something. So if you see, once the scan is complete, it will give you that Docker scan complete, and this is the summary of the scan. So I'll just hide this for a moment, just to show you how the interface. Again, I'll hide this for a moment. So if you see, this is the Docker scan summary, and this is the Docker scan audit summary. If you are curious, you can download the reports for the later purposes. If you want to show it to some stakeholders or something, so you can download the reports. Just click on this particular link, the report will get downloaded. Now let's go through the results which are being there. Oh, sorry, it's taking some time. Yes. So if you see, this is how it looks. The results. This is how the result would look like, and this is the raw result. Instead of a audit result, it's a raw result. So it's saying that there is a Docker named E71E or something, and these plugins has been executed for this Docker. I'll just quickly do this so that you can see the list of all plugins that have been executed for this Docker. So if you see, for this particular Docker, these plugins has been executed. User command history, file info, file system info, plain text password, proc info, sample info, security profiles. These plugins has been executed, and these are the checks that has been performed. So if you see in the user command history, nothing is present, so no check has been performed. The check has been performed, but there is no output. If you see in the file system, these check has been performed. One is world writable directories by root, world writable directories, and these are the results. This is the message, and this is the results. And if you can go ahead, you can go inside the plugin itself and see this plugin has performed these many checks. It has identified world writable directories, world readable directories, and world writable files, SUID files, root, and etc. etc. At times you will get to see that there was some permission denied, which is well and good for us. So I'll just ignore this for a moment. And yeah, this is how the raw results would look. And now I will show you the audit results. So this is how the audit result would look, and they get complicated definitely. So I'll just pick a simpler one. So if you see, the audit results look like this. As I've already mentioned, it will give you the plugin name, and plugin name says that there is a warning, and the warning is that there is a read write mount available. So this is a warning, and this is how the plugin is pointing that out. And again, if you see the next one, it's saying that there is a audit result from security profiles saying that there is a warning, and the warning says that the SLMS policies has been disabled and the environment profile has been disabled. If you see the next one says that for this particular Docker, user command history has been present, which is a warning, and the history is present as a root history, and the history says that ID and exit. So this was the intentional. I created an ID and exit so that I can show you in the demonstration. I actually went inside the Docker, performed the ID and exit command, and this is how it looks. So if you see, this is again the result. The file info says that there is a warning, there is a presence of world writable for root, and these are the files var temp and dev shm and sys firmware, etc. So this is how the audit results should look like. And if you are curious to evaluate these results later, you can perform the download. As you click on this download, the download will ask you to download the audit report, etc. And that's very easy. You can download it, and yeah, this is how this tools look like. Now let's go back to our slides. So if you see, so if you see, this is how the results from audit would look like. It says that the first part is the plugin name. It's actually a CSV file, JSON according to each specific Docker. So it says that there is a plugin name which is user info. It will give you the alert type, which is warning, and then at the end of the field, it's a description. So this is how the results from audit would look like. Yes. Now let's talk about few things which are there, which are not in the tool right now, but I would be happy to work on these tools. And if you have some suggestions, please feel free to raise pull requests or raise issues. I will definitely spare some time and work on these issues. So one is like, this is actually, I mean, I've seen a lot of people are asking me to do is like suggestion for remediation. So let's say there is a issue has been identified in particular configuration, then how you can remediate that. So one thing is like, for issue you will Google and then provide the recommendations, but that is tricky again. So this is according to the needs of organization, how the organization want to remediate that issue up. So how we can incorporate that suggestion related framework also in this pipeline. So that's one future work. And yeah, definitely I want to work on the better UI because the UI is not good. I hope I'll get support from community for the UI at least, and a simplified way of plugin creation. So if you see in the existing slide, I've mentioned that for the plugin creation, you have to write a specific Python file in a specific notation. But I want to make this plugin creation more beautiful in a way that you can create the plugin from UI itself. Let's say if you just want to execute a specific command, and you just want to compare the result of that command with the specific fields, then you can, from the UI itself, you can create a plugin and then save it and then execute that plugin up. So I want a simplified way of creating plugins up. Docker network monitoring, right now it's not there in the tool, but I would like to incorporate that in my tool. If you have been following my repositories, then you will see that in the command line interface, you can specify the number of processes that you want to run. So you can speed up the execution time. Actually decrease the execution time, speed up the execution processing. But when it comes to UI, there is no such thing, because if you see in the UI, actually I'm borderline through Streamlit for giving me the UI. So I want to fix those things up. I want to make that thing parallel so that we can get the results quickly. That's what my future work is. And yeah, I want to make this tool popularized because of that I can gain interaction from open source community. Once I gain the interaction from open source community, I can get some support also from security engineers, from developers, from UI engineers as well. So that will be good. So this is all about the tool. It can help you analyze running containers. I hope you like the tool. If you have any questions, I'll take up that. But yeah, this is the GitHub link for this particular tool, or you can directly search DockerENT on Google. And once you search that, the first link that is coming in is the GitHub link. If you like the tool, or if you like anything about the tool, if you like this presentation or anything, don't forget to drop in a star. As you know how this open source community works. As I get stars, I'll get more contribution from the team. I'll get more attraction, and yeah, that will definitely help me out to grow this tool up. So yeah, that's all about the tool. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. I hope I'll be able to answer them. And yeah, thank you for listening to this presentation. I hope this helped you out in some way, and I am hopeful that you will be using this tool up in your, let's say, in your personal scope or in your organizational scope. So yeah, thank you so much for that. Thank you.